Hey guys, my name is Matt Downs. I'm a professional sports bettor, and in this video, we're going to talk specifically about how to profit on exchanges like Novig and ProphetX. This is a no BS tips and strategy video. As you guys can see, last month I made over $14,000 just on exchanges. Now, to further prove this to you, I am logged into my Novig account, and they recently rolled out this feature where you can see all your stats on if you're profitable or not in what specific markets, your all-time record, your monthly record, and also on the screen, you guys will see my tracked picket. Again, every single one of my bets, whether it's from Novig, PrizePicks, ProphetX, every single sports book that is available in Florida that I use is linked right up to this picket. So all these results are tracked. And again, this is a completely no BS strategy and tips video. I want to show you guys and be as transparent as possible. That being said, one of my most used books is going to be on Novig, which is an exchange. We're going to talk about exchanges throughout this entire video and how they're a little bit different from sports books and how to profit on them. But here, as you can see here, I'm logged into my Novig account. You can switch between the dollar value and the ROI percentage for just visibility purposes. We're going to keep this on the percentages here just to start out, just to show you my most profitable edges here on Novig. As you can see, if you look through my yesterday, made a little bit of money. This week up 1.1%. This month 0.8%. The month just started, so obviously just yesterday. This year up 2.7%. So I've had my most success this previous year, and then all time I'm up 1.8%. Right, so just to prove to you, I am the most profitable here. Looks like it's going to be in basketball specifically, with NCAA basketball, professional basketball, and then I'm still needing a little bit of help here with football. I'm still profitable for NFL. College football, not so much, but as you can see here, the volume isn't as high with college football. Hockey, slightly down. Need a little bit of help there, but also lacking a lot of volume. And then baseball, no volume at all, but still very profitable there. As you can see here, my best market types are going to be in money lines, spreads, and totals. That's for a specific reason. We're going to touch base on that here in this video. Props, it's funny, I was actually up 0.1% yesterday, and yesterday actually brought me into the negative, so I had a bad run with props yesterday. And there's a specific reason why player props are not as profitable on these exchanges. We're going to touch base on that as well. That being said, on ProphetX, I am actually more profitable with player props than I am on Novig. All right, so we're going to talk about all this. In general, parlays are not going to be your peer-to-peer aspect. Didn't play parlays that much. As you can see here, negative on parlays when it comes to Novig. Make, take, and pregame orders, I am profitable, and then slightly down on live orders. So I do bet primarily all of my action here pregame. And as you guys can see here, I am logged into my account. If I switch over to the actual dollar amounts, I am up $21,000 all time. I've been using a heavy amount of Novig lately over the past 3-4 months. A majority of my volume has come from Novig, especially over the past month. And you can see here broken down by the dollar amounts here on the screen. Now I bring up, my record, obviously to prove credibility, one, and then two, because it's much needed for the context in this video, right? We need to know why we're attacking certain markets, why we're observing and not observing other markets, and basically just to lay the landscape of this video and go over why each one of these strategies work. But in order to understand the strategies and what I do personally for these exchanges, we must first establish the ground rules and basically the common knowledge of sports betting, and specifically between exchanges and sports books, the pros and cons to each, and why exchanges can be so advantageous, especially as a sharp sports bettor. The first thing to understand is VIG. VIG is basically the tax that sportsbooks charge for each one of their bets that they charge their customers, right? Whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, PrizePicks, Underdog, they all have underlying VIG, right? Some taxed amount that they're charging each one of their sports bettors for each one of their bets. Some higher than others, some lower than others, right? The lower the VIG, the more likely it is that you'll be able to find an edge, right? So let's actually take a look at an example here on FanDuel Sportsbook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to FanDuel here, and we're going to look just at these NBA game lines, right? For anybody who doesn't know how to read game lines or American odds, highly recommend you guys start off there. I have another beginner video where I uncover how to observe these types of lines from an American odds perspective. But we're going to assume that you know just enough about American odds here to understand the fact that VIG is charged on these sports books. So for anybody who doesn't know what VIG is here, what I'm going to do is show it to you visually here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Washington Wizards here at plus 540 and the Philadelphia 76ers at minus 770. These are called money lines, right? You're betting on one team to win and the other one to lose, right? So there's only two different outcomes here. They're either going to win or lose on each one of these teams, right? Now, these American odds here at plus 540 and minus 770 are just simply American odds and payouts, right? So you bet on one side or the other, and you're going to get rewarded based on those American odds that the sportsbook has set, right? Now, that being said, since there's only two different outcomes, one team's going to win, the other team's going to lose, you would think that the probability for these two teams, right, added together is going to be 100%, right? It's like flipping a coin, right? You're only going to get two different outcomes. You're going to get heads or you're going to get tails. The Washington Wizards are either going to win or they're going to lose. Same thing with the 76ers, right? Now, because there's only two different outcomes, we'd expect the probability for these two teams to win combined would be equal to 100%, right? So let's actually take a look here at if these implied odds actually equal 100%, right? Because theoretically that would make sense. So the Washington Wizards right now, their odds actually went down at plus 530. Let's actually see what kind of odds we're getting there. We're getting 15.87%. So according to FanDuel, given their implied odds, the FanDuel was giving them a 15.87% chance to win this game versus 76ers. Not that high, right? Now, before I even run off to see what the implied odds are going to be for the 76ers to win, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this calculator here and see what they should be, right? Given the fact that both these teams combined should equal 100%. I'm going to take 100 minus the 15.87% that they gave the Wizards to win, and it comes out to be 84.13%. So when I plug in the implied odds for this FanDuel line for the 76ers, it should come out to be exactly 84.13%, right? Because both teams to win equals 100%, right? So let's actually head over minus 70 or 770, right? I'm going to go ahead and put this in minus 770, and it comes out to be 88.51, but I should be getting 84.13%. So what's going on here? Why is there a discrepancy? And that discrepancy is the VIG, the percentage charged for the sports book on each one of their lines. And for the specific line between the Wizards and the 76ers, they're giving themselves about a 4.5% extra edge that they're charging into the price tags that you're getting when betting on either the Wizards or the 76ers, right? So again, I call it a tax, VIG, implied odds, whatever you want to call it. The sports books, that's how they gain their edge. They're simply adding on this added probability to keep them ahead of their sports bettors. They're giving themselves even more of an edge here, so that when you bet on the Wizards or the 76ers long term, if you were to bet this exact same game over the long term, let's call it thousands and thousands of times. They've already run their simulations. They've already done their modeling. They've done this, over the course of 1,000+ different times for this exact same game. They're determining, hey, this exact percent odds to hit for the Wizards is going to be about that, 15.87% mark. And for the 76ers, it's going to be, about that 84 to 88% range. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of a boost here. We're going to punish the sports bettors, not give them as much bang for their buck as what we should be giving them. And that's how we're going to make money long term, by beating our sports bettors. So let's talk about this another way. Let's actually look at the spread of this game, right? There's only two different outcomes, right? Let's actually take a look at a non-even spread here. Plus 5.5 for the Trailblazers to cover, and minus 5.5 for the Raptors to cover, right? Minus 110 on each side. So visually, this is easier to understand. If I put down $100, right, for each one of these player props, whether it's on the Trailblazers to cover or the Raptors, I should be getting an output, since I'm putting on $200, a $200 payout in either one of these scenarios, right? But that's not necessarily the case, because if you see here, I put in $100, I'm only getting $90.91, meaning that the house edge is going to be that extra $9.09, right, on either side. So if I go and bet $100 on the other side, again, I should be getting $100 in return, when in reality, I'm not getting that. And that's the house edge, right? VIG looks different for different markets, for different sports books. The VIG here might actually look lower than another sports book like a Fliff, like an Underdog, like a Prize Picks, where I know that their VIG is a lot higher. The tax that they're charging against their users is a lot higher, and therefore it's a lot harder for the sports bettors to beat that specific sports book. Now that we know what VIG actually means, the tax, the added amount, the edge that the sports book have against their sports bettors, let's actually take a look at the VIG that exists on these peer-to-peer exchanges like Novig, and let's actually directly compare, because I feel like that's the best way to understand exactly what I'm talking about, right? And this example is going to show you guys exactly how and why it's easier to be profitable on these exchanges, especially if you're a high volume, sharp sports bettor, right? So let's actually switch over to the events here. I'm going to look for the Wizards and the 76ers exact example. And what you should notice is that these numbers, numerically speaking, are a lot closer, meaning there's less VIG, because the difference between these exchanges and the sports books is that anybody, I mean anyone under the sun, your mom, your dad, your dog, anybody can set lines on Novig, right? Like I can go set my own line, whatever I want it to be, if I want to take action on the opposing side of that bet. Meaning that if I wanted to, I could set the Wizards line to plus 600, right? And the 76ers to minus 700, right? The whole point being is that I can literally set this line to whatever I want. That being said, what you'll notice because of that, there's less organic VIG, because there's less of an edge when it comes to the VIG when looking at these peer-to-peer exchanges, which can be advantageous for you as a sharp sports bettor, especially if you're trying to identify edges in the market, right? So again, this is just from experience. I knew that the VIG was going to be lower on Novig, no pun intended there, because again, it's just exchanges. You can set it. You can set the line to whatever you want with little to no commission, whether it's on ProphetX or Novig. So if I look here at the money line on the Wizards, if I were to place, let's just call it $100, right? On this specific line, I get $722 in return as a payout. If I were to do this on FanDuel and I put $100 on here, it would be the only win. I think they put their payout as the grand total. So really they just display it differently. On Novig, I'm getting $625 in additional return. And on FanDuel, I'm getting $530 in additional return, which is basically $100 difference by simply placing the exact same bet on Novig compared to FanDuel. And again, it's because FanDuel is punishing you more long-term, just simply because of the VIG that they charge. They are a sports book. That's how they make money. They're going to charge VIG, and they're going to punish the normal sports bettor. And they're also going to punish the sharp sports bettors that happen to find an edge on these sports books by simply limiting them. On Novig, that's not how they make their money. They make their money through a lot of different monetization. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but they make their money in different ways, not through their actual sports betting, right? ProphetX charges a 1% commission per bet that you make, which is, again, drastically lower than that of a FanDuel, where their VIG, we just uncovered, is closer to 5% for game lines, right? So as we can see here, better overall payouts on these exchanges. Now, another thing to note is I just looked at the first example here with the Wizards and the 76ers. If I take a look here right below it versus the Knicks and the Boston game, I'm getting minus 103 on one side and plus 100 on the other. That's 3 cents of hold. That is unheard of on sportsbooks. If we were to take a look here at the Knicks and the Celtics, their money line is minus 104 on one side and minus 112. Both payouts. You can get more bang for your buck, although it's slight. On the Knicks here, if you're better on Novig, on Boston, you're getting 12 cents better of a payout by simply betting on Boston. Again, because this is an open market. You're not betting against the sports book, you're betting against other players, which again is one of the many reasons why exchanges are more of a lucrative experience, especially as a sharp sports bettor, right? So anyway, I basically went down this huge rabbit hole of VIG at sports books and how it's different from exchanges. I need you guys to understand that fundamental difference before we uncover the real edge on sports books versus exchanges. So let's take everything we learned and let's kind of recap and summarize, right? We basically learned that, hey, the edge on sports books is generally speaking harder to exploit than the average exchange because the VIG that they're charging is historically just larger than the exchanges on an open market. More VIG equals less of an edge, right? Less VIG equals more of an edge, or at least the availability to find that edge. Now, I'm not saying that some random sportsbook spin up you can't find an edge, right? Like there's obviously sports books that just simply suck. They go out of business because they can't set lines. But here with a FanDuel and DraftKings, they're obviously billion-dollar companies for reasons because their lines are generally pretty sharp. And I'm also sitting here not saying that exchanges can't be sharp. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of sharps on exchanges as well. But there are also a lot of casual fans, at least based on what I've seen as well, right? There's a healthy ecosystem the exact same way that there's usually a healthy ecosystem on these sports books for some amount of time. And because there's a healthier ecosystem on these exchanges of casual and sharp sports bettors, you're going to realize that the VIG and the width is a lot smaller, specifically with these game markets, right? Because there's a lot more liquidity, a lot more people, a lot more popularity wanting to bet on these game lines. There's a lot fewer too, right? There's only one game line, there's only one money line for a specific contest, whereas player props, there could be 20 up to 30 for a specific NBA contest, right? Per category. That's not even considering rebounds, assists, PRA, it goes on and on and on. So finding an edge as a sports book is a lot harder to find an edge than the game line, right? There's a lot more liquidity. There's a lot more data points. Whereas with player props, they set their player prop lines to some set number with a crazy amount of VIG. And that's why it's naturally higher on sports books. And that actually goes for exchanges as well. You'll notice that it's a lot easier to exploit the game lines, the money lines, because the width is a lot lower. And visually, I'm just going to show you this, right? So we identified that the VIG here on Novig is 4 cents of hold here, right? And look at this. This is an NHL contest, 1 cent of hold. If we keep scrolling down here, 8 cents of hold. Again, still minimal compared to the sports books. But let's actually take a look at some of these player props. They're actually, pretty large. Minus 108, minus 111. That's actually comparable here to these FanDuel game lines. Minus 112, minus 110. Again, that's still pretty low. It's still not lower than that of a game line, money line, or spread, or game total for that matter. Plus 104 to minus 129, right? There's still a large amount of width, a large amount of hold. So finding an edge on these player props is going to be a little bit tougher to identify than that of a game line. Lack of liquidity, right? The fact that these props are juiced a lot more, right? It's harder to find a mispriced side when looking at over and unders. So now let's move on to the actual strategy, right? Uncovering every single thing that we just talked about and actually visually seeing how much of an edge these sportsbooks bake into their odds. Wouldn't finding an edge on exchanges require just simply looking at the lowest holds, the lowest juiced odds across the entire market, right? Let's say that, again, we're looking at this Knicks and Boston Celtics matchup. There's literally 1 cent of hold. Isn't there a greater chance that there's an edge on this money line, right? Just logically speaking, doesn't that make sense? And again, I don't know if there is an edge or not. There could not be an edge here. But what this thing I'm about to show you, the strategy that I'm about to show you does is it identifies those exact markets and then takes it a step further and identifies which side is more off and which side has an edge. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an automated tool to identify those profitable edges, right? With the click of a refresh button every 3 seconds, this is showing you the most profitable, lowest hold lines in the entire industry, whether it be a player prop, a game line, a game spread, total, it doesn't matter. This tool shows you which one of those game markets on an exchange has the lowest hold and which one has the greatest edge. I'm going to walk you through my exact process on what I do every single day over hundreds and hundreds of bets to make sure that I'm profitable long term. So let's go ahead and take this a step further. I'm going to walk you through this tool and show you exactly what we're looking at. Also on the left side here, I'm going to cover it with my phone, but before I do, I'm going to show you exactly what is on that left side. And all it's doing is it's identifying the lowest hold opportunities. And some of these are actually they actually have an arbitrage opportunity, which we'll also talk about. But I'm going to go ahead and put my phone over this for now because, again, it's not necessary to see that. All that you guys care about and all that we really care about is the fact that these are the best low hold opportunities. Now, one thing you'll also notice on this tool is that, the tool is littered with player props at the very top. And we already established early on in this video that player props, it can be profitable, but it's a lot harder to be. And again, we talked through some of the reasons, but another reason is because low hold opportunities generally come from Hard Rock, especially on this tool. If you're in Florida, if you're not, you can just get rid of them on the filter here. You can just deselect Hard Rock and move on. But they are known to be extremely soft when it comes to player props. I'm limited down to $10 per bet for NBA player props specifically, but you'll notice here that the more lucrative opportunities generally on the Hard Rock side, right? And even if you don't believe that, you can still arb, right, between Novig and Hard Rock. And again, I don't even consider this a good arbitrage opportunity because I can only bet a max of $10. But anyway, one of the many reasons why I avoid player props. Now, it's very rare that I find a good opportunity. Like, again, BetMGM is generally a softer side for, betting on player props. But again, they're even more, there's more limits at somebody like BetMGM than there is even at Hard Rock. So let's go ahead and find a game line, a really good example where the width, where the VIG is extremely low in the game market, right? So let's actually take a look here. Polymarket is, at the time of recording this video, they are in the US and there's minimal amounts of markets. I don't even think that this market's available in the US yet. So, but either way, we can use them for an example here. And what we're looking at here is a very close to 0% hold. And what that means is that the VIG charged on either side of this market is so low that if you were to bet a certain amount on each side of this bet, you would get basically 0% profit, right? Which, in other words, means that there's more than likely a more profitable side, whether you're betting on the Novig side in this example or the Polymarket side here. And visually, you can see that, right? Plus 109 on this side and minus 108. If you put down $108 on the side of Polymarket and $91.74, you get exactly $100, right? And again, if you bet it equally on each side, you would get no money as a return. I think since there's a cent of hold, you'd get minimal amounts of profit. But anyway, what we're able to identify here is a very, very low hold. Now, which side is more profitable? That's the only thing that we care about identifying here, right? And basically what we want to know is, based on the market average, what side is more profitable, right? We're taking the average of Circa, Novig, Pinnacle, Polymarket. You go down this line of a lot of books. Some of them are more reputable than others. Some of them have higher limits. Regardless, if I'm looking at a Circa, I'm looking at a Pinnacle, I'm looking at a Flip, ProphetX, generally speaking, when they devig their odds, they're all going to have a very similar percent odds to hit for their respective sides. Also meaning that when I devig both of these sides of the over and under of the 235.5 of this Timberwolves and Pelicans game, the total amount should come out to be 100%, unlike the FanDuel example that I was using earlier. And we can do that with a simple toggle here. So what we're going to do to identify which side is more profitable, we're looking at the implied odds, right? At plus 109 on Novig for the over and the minus 108 implied odds for the under. We're going to toggle on the show fair odds, which is another term for devigging, another term for just showing, hey, each sportsbook without their juiced lines. We'll go ahead and toggle that on, and we'll quickly identify that the over or that the under is slightly more favored than the over. And when you look at the implied odds of the devigged odds, the average odds of this market, it's going to come out to be 100%. So now that we've taken out the juice, we can look at the true percent chance for this to hit the under or over. So I can show you here, if we input minus 170 for the under, 62.96%, and plus 107, 48.31%, and minus 107. I think minus 170 is what I did before. You can see that 51.69% plus the plus 107, sorry, I had to do that multiple times, plus 48.31% gives you exactly that 100%. So now that we've devigged this, basically the books are giving it a slight favor for the under to hit in this game than the over, but only very slight, right? Now, here's where the strategy comes in. If we undevig the odds here, we see that is set to plus 109 as a payout here on Novig. So if I input the American odds, plus 109, and let's say I put $10 on that, I'm getting a payout of $10.90 extra than the devig market, which would be $107, right? 107 or plus 107 would be $10.70. I'm getting an extra 20 cents of payout, right? If I were to play plus 109, even though the true odds are simply saying, hey, you should only get paid out $10.70. Now, even though that edge is minimal, imagine you take hundreds and hundreds of bets with minimal edge in a very efficient market, which you can do with exchanges. And that's the edge. So let's walk through this. Again, the whole reason we're taking this is because the implied odds, right? The actual odds you get paid out, the actual payout here at plus 109 is greater than the DVIG market average of plus 107. Now, the opposing side, it's worse for Polymarket, right? So if I look at the minus 108, right, and I DVIG, I'm looking at minus 107, that payout is slightly better. The market average payout is slightly better than what I would be getting on Polymarket at minus 108. And again, just very slim. And you'll see that with very efficient markets. But again, I would avoid Polymarket in this instance. Now, is this bet going to hit? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm identifying a very slight edge versus the payout I am getting versus the payout I should be getting. And again, based on the market average at this specific time. Now, am I saying that the odds won't move against me not in my favor, right? Or will they move in my favor, right? That we don't know. But what we're doing is we're taking the edge at the very specific time at which you are able to identify it. Right now, the market's saying, hey, the over is mispriced. I should be hitting the over on Novig. And again, this is based on the assumption that Circa, that Novig, that Pinnacle, that Polymarket, all these sports books have done more than enough research, which they have, and they are all billion-dollar companies, the majority of them are, then that one sharp player who's setting that mispriced line on the opposing side and giving you that plus 109, $125 of liquidity on Novig. I would take this 100 out of 100 times. Now, I'd also be surprised if this was still there. So let's go ahead and give a quick refresh and walk through another example on what a profitable play actually looks like. And you do have to be somewhat quick to identify these examples on Novig because, again, it is an open market. All these players are looking for lines they want to take advantage of. They're setting different lines, right? So here at the very top, I don't have access to Caesars, but there's something going on here with the spread. If you do have Caesars or Pinnacle, what you can do here is take advantage of this line. But what I would do, let's just look at this as an example. Let's assume that I was a Caesars and Pinnacle player. What I would be doing here is I would be devigging the market. Again, but before we're looking at minus 105 and plus 122. Which one of those gives you the better payout after devigging the market average? And here, I'm getting an average market odds of minus 108 and plus 108. And plus 122 is not better than plus 108. But minus 105 is a better payout than minus 108. So therefore, I would take advantage of the Caesars side. Regardless of whatever your bankroll is, I'd be putting a full unit or more on this Caesars play if I had access, which I don't. So anyway, we're going to identify something with Novig, ProphetX. Let's actually take a look here. This is a Polymarket. We're going to go ahead and ignore Polymarket for now. And again, I'm skipping past the player props for all the reasons we talked about earlier. Here's a really good play on, it looks like it's an arb opportunity here between ProphetX or Novig. But again, one of these sides is more off than the other. So let's actually take a look here. If I devig the odds, and I can already tell here that the over or that the under is more favored than the under. But let's go ahead and devig, and it's going to be close to 50-50 here on both sides. So if I'm looking at a 50-50 chance here, they actually both have an edge, which is actually really crazy. But the ProphetX side gives me a better bang for my buck here. I'd take advantage of just the ProphetX side at plus 102. And that's the way I would look at that, right? And honestly, you can take advantage of both of these and guarantee an ARB, right? Only $134 of liquidity and 49, but you guys get it, right? Let's do one more here, Moneyline. This is really fun. Kalshi is a really fun exchange, prediction market to take advantage of. And I'd be stoked if there was an actual edge here on the Timberwolves because there is $52,000 of liquidity on the side of the Timberwolves. So let's actually take a look here if there is an edge. Kalshi, minus 189 and plus 525 on the side of DraftKings. I have a slight sense that the DraftKings side is going to be the more offside, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and take a look. Let's hope I'm wrong. And sure enough, so the payout is going to be, oh wait, nope, I misread it. There is a very slight edge on the side of the Timberwolves. So right now, if I had $50,000 on Kalshi, the best thing to do financially would be to throw all $50,000 on the side of Kalshi. This actually really excites me because Kalshi, again, I'm a new Kalshi user, in Florida. I believe, it just passed and it is now legal in Florida along with these other 50 states. So I would be stoked to take advantage of this Kalshi option. And again, very slim edge, but the more likely opportunity at this point in time is going to be taking advantage of the Minnesota Timberwolves, because again, the payout of minus 493 is not as good of a payout as the minus 489 price that we're getting on the Timberwolves on Kalshi. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. And again, this is all the strategy is, just identifying which side is the more profitable side of these low hold opportunities. Now, these opportunities do exist with player props, with game markets, with spreads, but you have to look at every single opportunity with a grain of salt, with more context. Again, player props don't have as much book support, yada, yada, yada. You can be profitable with these player props. That being said, these sharps are setting these lines for various different reasons, right? And there's a lot of hold here. So anyway, hopefully this video was helpful, and hopefully you guys are convinced that you can be profitable on exchanges. And again, I just want to show you my recap here. I have been very profitable, specifically in basketball, more importantly with money lines, with spreads and totals, and that's where I put a majority of my liquidity when I do see a low hold example like the ones that we're looking at here. If you guys did find this video helpful, please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.